homeschoolers. It's almost that time again. Time to start up our homeschool journey for the year. If you are new to homeschooling, this video is definitely for you. I want to talk about how to choose a curriculum. There's thousands of curriculums out there and it's super overwhelming, especially for people that are new. And I remember when I was first deciding what curriculum to use, or even just deciding to homeschool. I was teaching in the public schools and I knew that I didn't want to send my children to school. So I was always researching curriculum just as a teacher, just to learn new ways of teaching things and more exciting ways and fun ways, and decided that I wanted to homeschool my own children. And so I stumbled across a lot of different homeschool curriculums. And so I was researching for years before I had to actually choose a curriculum. So I had an idea of what I liked, but I also took the advice of a lot of people around me. My sister was homeschooling at the time, and just some friends of the family, people at church, just different ones, and even online Facebook groups. You can get a lot of advice and curriculum recommendations from people in groups. And so I took all those ideas and recommendations and I did all the research for myself. So I would suggest you do the same thing, but when you're first starting, it's super overwhelming. So I just want to break this down a little bit to help you narrow down your choices, or to help you have a guide for when you're looking at curriculum. Is this going to fit me and my family, or isn't it? So the first thing that you should think about when you are deciding on your homeschool curriculum is, what does my ideal homeschool look like? Think about what you want to do during the day, like what homeschool to you looks like. Is it your children sitting at desks or the kitchen table working on workbooks? Is it sitting around snuggling and reading stories and learning that way? Is it by playing games with cards and dice or board games? Is it learning with lots of crafts and building things? Is it watching videos, fun, engaging, educational videos that you find online, and applying that learning that you're doing together? Are you outside a lot? Are you doing lots of field trips? Are there community activities that you want to be involved in? And what's available in your community? Are there art classes? Are there music lessons? Are there different sports? Do you have a good library that you can go to that you can either get books from immediately, or they can order books so you can get them that way? Are there co-ops in your area, homeschool co-ops, where you'd like to join and just let other moms teach your kids for a little while? We've kind of done it all. And so just thinking about, okay, what do I want my homeschool to look like, can really help us narrow down a curriculum. Because if you want your children to be sitting around the table working on a workbook, then you're not going to pick one of the Charlotte Mason type curriculums where you're sitting around reading a lot. So you do need to think about what your ideal homeschool looks like for you. Now, there are different ways that children learn. Children can learn visually, so they learn by seeing charts and graphs. Even words on a page can help a lot. Numbers are usually a good cue of visual learners if they learn their numbers really quickly. Now, some children are auditory learners, and our auditory learners learn by hearing. They absorb the sounds around them. If you're teaching them something by word of mouth, if you give them a direction, they can go and do it and follow that direction easily. Where a visual learner would probably need more of a to-do list to follow those directions and get a job done well. Our other learners are called kinesthetic learners, and they learn by doing or seeing others do something. So if we're talking about chores again, then you may have to demonstrate exactly how you want them to sweep. You may have to demonstrate wiping the counter down and wiping the mirror down, and what that really looks like to have a job well done. So those are our three learners: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. If you know that your child is not an auditory learner, then you are not going to want to use a program that has audiobooks. That's a lot of reading out loud. Your child just isn't going to absorb the information. And the third thing that you really need to think about when you're choosing curriculum are your own limits as the parent. I do not like reading out loud. I don't know why. I wish I liked it more because that's really actually important in helping kids learn. But that's one of the things that I don't like about certain curriculums. I've tried curriculums where you have to read out loud a lot of the stuff, and I just didn't like it myself. My kids didn't like it either. They didn't like to sit down and listen to me read to them. And they're not auditory learners, so it did not go well. So along with knowing your own limits, how many kids are you homeschooling? That makes a big difference. And maybe even more important is how many kids are you not schooling that are running around distracting your other children? Do you have toddlers and babies that make it a lot harder, that cry and you need to help, that you need to change their diaper, that you need to stop and feed? That makes a big difference in how your homeschool can run smoothly. You also need to think about what other commitments do you have. Do you have a garden? Do you have a farm? Do you have a job that you're going to certain times of day, certain days of the week? Are you babysitting other people's children? That's all going to have an effect on how your homeschool runs. And if you take all that into consideration, that will help you pick a curriculum too. So that all helps you to realize how teacher heavy can your curriculum be. So by teacher heavy, I mean teacher directed. So if you have a curriculum where you have to read everything, where you have to sit and say all the spelling words, where you have to read out loud a lot, where you have to sit and explain a game and play the game with the child, like that's super fun. But if you have toddlers running around, that may not be super practical. Another thing you want to know about your limits is, are you okay with screen time? Are you okay with curriculums that have videos where they're doing a lot of the learning by watching a video or watching someone else teach a lesson? You can take into account how fun or how crafty you want to be in your lessons. When I had just a couple children, then we did way more crafts. We did all the letter crafts and all the fun stuff. And it just got a lot harder as we had more children and added them to the mix. So just by being aware of all those things, that will help you choose a curriculum that you enjoy and that your kids enjoy. So think about what are your interests and what are your children's interests. If your interests are not sitting down reading books, and you pick a curriculum that you're reading books a lot of the time, that's going to just make your homeschool miserable for you and for your child. I don't want it to just be all about us, because we are serving our children, but if we aren't having fun, there just isn't a way for them to have fun. If mommy's always grumpy about having to read to them again, then that's not the school that we want to create for them. Okay, so moving on to, are you just beginning with preschool and kindergarten, or are you starting in 5th or 6th grade? If you are starting in just preschool or kindergarten, at the very beginning, all you need to focus on is reading and math. And I know in preschool and kindergarten, everyone says it can be done for free, just do the fun stuff. That's awesome if you're one of those fun, crafty moms. You can, if you have lots of time on your hands, you can look up lots of fun Pinteresty things to do with your kids and they'll learn a ton. If you're not, if you have several children, if you just don't have the time to look up all those fun Pinterest things, then you are going to have to choose a curriculum. But you don't have to choose a reading and a math and a writing and a spelling and a handwriting and a science and a history and a everything curriculum. You can just focus on reading and math. I would find a really simple curriculum that, you can even buy workbooks at Walmart, right? When you're beginning, it's not so important about choosing the curriculum as much as it is important to learn about your child and what you and your child enjoy doing together and what you can handle as far as homeschooling goes. So just picking some workbooks from a local store is probably actually a really good way to kind of practice and see what kind of curriculum that you would like. Do you want the cutting out, pasting, gluing, sticky mess all over your house? Or do you need something a little bit less mess? And we need to remember that bookwork is not the only learning going on. In some states, it's a requirement to count all your hours. That doesn't have to be just sit down bookwork hours. That can be watching YouTube videos that are educational. It can be bedtime stories. It can be any crafty stuff that you do. It can be your everyday life, like cooking and cleaning. Cooking has tons of fractions in it, and if you start cooking early, fractions are so much easier for your kids to learn because they've already seen some. They understand what a quarter of a cup is or a half a cup. Puzzles are great educational things. Games, board games are fantastic educational things that you can do with your kids that aren't boring sit-down workbook things, but they can still be learning addition. If they're working with dice, they can be learning subtraction in some of the games. Like, it depends on the game, obviously, but there's a lot of different things. Some of them are very history related, or the states at least, geography. There's lots of games out there that are super educational. And then obviously any field trips you go on, there's a local field trip that we go to that's very science-based. There's lots of museums and parks and stuff you can go to, zoos that have, some of them have crafty stuff you can do with your kids, and some of them are just good educational things to do. Like, they have that good educational base, and it doesn't have to be just bookwork that you're counting as your educational time. And the other thing I love is audiobooks in the car. Now, I said my kids are not really auditory learners, which is totally true. But if we have a really good story on in the car, they're getting a lot of information from it. And we have one that's very science-based, and so they're getting a ton of science just when we drive around in the car. So that's another way to get in some of your schooling. You can also do math fact CDs and stuff like that. Now, the last thing I want to leave you with is do not be afraid to change if something isn't working. There's just no sense in slogging through that workbook or that curriculum that is not working for you or your child, just to say you finished it. Like, there's no learning that happened there. Like, how much learning actually occurred when you're just slogging your way through. So if something's not working, throw it out. I know it's hard to switch curriculums in the middle of the year. I've done it over and over, it seems like, because I didn't learn all this stuff in the very beginning. I didn't think about it. So I wish I had had this video to watch. So if you would like to sign up for our newsletter, you will also get a free curriculum guide that gives you a bunch of curriculums to research on your own, and it gives you little blurbs about what these curriculums are and are not. You can check that out in the link below this video. And just remember that book learning is not the only goal here either. We have to remember about kindness and teaching our kids how to interact with others. We have to teach them hard work and stick-to-itness. How are they going to be able to survive in the world or a career that they choose in the future, and serving others. And for a lot of us, there's a huge faith component to our homeschool as well. So we want to remember to keep those things as the most important part of our school, the most important part of our school day, and let the book learning fall in place where it will. So I hope that we can create together a school that we love.